Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and we got the Civivi Cogent button lock flipper here that we got the full review on. We got a lot to get into, from geometry, sharpening, steel, spine whack tests, problems, whether or not I was able to solve them. So this knife did start getting blade rock pretty bad, and we're going to talk about later how I fixed it. So let's just get right into it. So first of all, I was really excited for this knife to come out. You know, especially after the Civivi Elementum button lock, which I really enjoyed, but I did want a deployment option, and this definitely came out swinging because this action is insane on this. So let's get into the action, and then we'll get into the cutting geometry and ergos. So the detent, or what acts like a detent on this, which is the plunge lock. There's a spring on this side pushing a plunge into the lockup, and that also acts as the detent. But the way they have this flipper tab set up, coupled with the tension of the spring and the weight of the blade, the flipping action, they knocked it out of the park. They could not have done it better. Not at all. This action is absolutely perfection. And the flipper it's very comfortable. They jimped it all the way around, and how they kind of tapered this down right here, you know, where they cut this out right there, it gives you a little bit of extra thwack to your flip. Man, this thing hammers out. Really cool sound. Very snappy, and then it is on ceramic caged bearing, so it is complete fall shut action. Even on the close, when it locks into place, that has a nice sound to it too. Now, the ergos are really nice. I do feel the clip, it is T8 construction all the way around, and it has a reversible deep carry clip that's on T6s. So I'm happy they used T8s across the board, but they did use the T6s on the clip. Not a big deal, but it is reversible, which is cool because a button lock is ambidextrous. You know, you can use it just as easily as I can as a left-handed person. Well, I'm a right-handed person, but if you're a left-handed person, because you just, you know, use your pointer finger. But the ergos are really nice. I do feel the clip, however, but I did notice a lot of my cutting wound up like kind of like this, not because of the clip for any reason, but just because the geometry of the blade right there was really nice. So I found myself doing that quite a bit, kind of just locking my middle finger up there and using it like this. But this is just fine. Feel the clip, not a big deal. But the leverage you get behind your cuts are really powerful. This is a very hand-filling neutral ergo. I think it's neutral. I know there is a couple designated areas for your fingers, but for the most part, it's neutral. You can get and do reverse cuts really easily, and, you know, push cuts really easily. Nice jimping on the spine. There's jimping in a lot of places, and you'll notice there's lots of textured areas that actually lock you in really good. Now, I did bring this thing to work. I did not get to record it at work though, but that day I couldn't tell you how many straps, basically a bunch of straps. We broke down a bunch of cardboard, just basically that, and maybe some other odds and ends, cutting tape, etc. But the geometry of this knife is incredible. You know, Civivi does the best job with their geometry. They make knives to cut, and I love that about them. So we have a straight clip point blade, because if you notice, the clip point doesn't curve up, so it is a straight edge or straight drop down to the tip, which the tip does land in a really good area. We'll get to that in just a second. But this clip point blade slices really good. The geometry is amazing, and it passes through materials really good. You have tons of leverage into your cuts, and it works out great. My particular knife was right around 15 thousandths behind the edge, and, you know, with this nice thin blade stock, that, you know, adds to just pure cutting geometry. And the utility cuts, getting to the tip and using the tip, this thing works great. It has more of a precision tip, so you do want to be careful not to do any prying with it or anything like that. But for straight utility cuts and anything that you need a precision tip for, it works fantastic. It works great. And you can take advantage and get up nice and close to the blade, or nice and close to the tip, you know, for those finer tasks without being in too much danger. Now, the button lock, when you are in certain grips, I never found myself unlocking it because, one, they got like a hole, you know, like cut out for it. So even if I press it almost all the way, it doesn't unlock. I actually have to get it past that point, like you see right there. I have to get it past that point for it to drop. So there's really no threat of you unlocking it, really. Even when I squeeze right here, I personally can't unlock it. So, you know, a lot of people worry about it disengaging and things like that. You don't really have to worry about that. You pretty much have to be intentional to do that. Now, clip and carry. Now, the clip works great. I mean, it's just a regular budget clip, nothing special. I wish they would have inset it, but they did not. It is reversible, but it works fine. They did use flat screws, so I'm happy with that. In and out of the pocket, no problems. The G10 is pretty grippy though, so in hand, you know, you do feel that grippiness, which is really nice to keep it locked in your hand, but it doesn't really affect you too much in and out of the pocket. You might notice it a little bit in and out of the pocket, but it's not bad. You know, and they kind of added a couple little design features here. I could take them or leave them. Take them or leave them. I'm not that worried about it, I don't hate it, but you know, I don't really like it either. But I know they had to add a little bit of flair because, you know, to make it kind of unique. Now, the steel choice. They chose 14C 28N blade steel. I love that steel. That steel was made for cutlery. I think it was originally for razor blades. AEBL is where 14C 28N came from. Fantastic steel. And it is a steel that was made for production knives, production blades, you know, production razors. And it was made to be able to be heat treated very easily. Now, I love the Civivi's running it harder. So supposedly, which I believe, they're running it around 61 HRC, which that's amazing to me. And I truly believe them because the edge retention, I did do a controlled cut test with the Civivi Elementum button lock, and it did outstanding. You guys can go watch that video if you want. But, you know, 14C 28N does, you know, pretty good even when it's, how can I put this? Just about every company does it pretty good, and that's a reason why I like it a lot. Now, when they put some effort into it, like it seems Civivi's doing, it does outstanding. It sharpens really good, feels really good on the stone, has a good long-lasting edge. It's very easy to maintain. You can maintain it out in the field very easily. Now, when I started sharpening it, you know, I've sharpened a bunch of their 14C at this point, meaning Civivi's. And it always sharpens up really good. It takes a nasty sharp edge. Now, I know a lot of times, not always, but 14C takes a good edge regardless of the grit. You can do it at 600 grit, 400 grit, 1200 grit, or 5000 grit. It doesn't really matter. It takes such a keen, sharp edge. And like I said, it maintains very good too. So after you've used it a little bit, you can bring that edge right back with a little bit of stropping, you know, maybe a little bit of honing. Now, on the stone, you know, I do have a couple complaints, and we'll get into that when we get into the bad. But as the steel on the stone sharpening felt outstanding, took a ridiculously sharp edge. I didn't take this one to a polish, took this one to right around 600 grit. But, you know, I basically started with my ATOMA stones, worked my way up to my VENEV stones, and then stropped on, I think it was 6 micron gunny juice. I used the gunny juice. Stropping compound worked out great. Now, the factory edge didn't last that long, and that's one of the reasons why I did need to put it on the stone. And, you know, regardless, it's a factory edge, not that big of a deal, and it could be just me, you know. It could be just me because Civivi doesn't do a bad job with their factory edges. Now, I did spine whack it a little bit, but that has nothing to do with one of the issues I've had. I did that after noticing this issue, but I did spine whack it to see how well that button held up because I wanted to know. I'm going to do some more heavy duty tests in the future, but this was just a couple little spine whacks just to see if it would fail. So I gave it a couple knocks on the table and held up just fine. No problems. I didn't feel anything get better or, well, not better, but I didn't feel anything get worse after doing it. So that was a plus. But some of the negative things that I do have with this, well, it does have some blade rock issues, meaning when I go like this, it is shifting back and forth a little bit. A lot of button locks do that. Some don't. It kind of just depends on the lock face geometry and the spring. We might take this thing apart and try to fix that issue. So stay tuned. We'll see if I can fix it. But regardless, it had nothing to do with me spine whacking it. I had this before I ever spine whacked it. It didn't get any worse. It just, stayed the same. So that tells me either the lock face geometry is just not pushing in hard enough, or maybe the spring is just not strong enough for it now. At first it was locked up very solid, but after some use cutting and flipping, it did wind up getting just a little bit. Now, like I said, that's button locks, a lot of them do that. Now, side to side, no play at all. No play whatsoever. It's incredibly smooth. Now, another issue, this plunge grind. Sharpening it, this is one of the issues. I don't know why because they had all the room in the world back here to put a sharpening choil. I don't know why they put the plunge grind to the edge. This is only one light sharpening. It's not like I removed a ton of steel or anything like that. And it's not like I laid back the angle really, really low or anything. This is about a 17, 18 degree angle. But you see how it's already hitting back here. Now, after another sharpening, man, it's just going to look ugly. That's what it's going to do. And I would just rather see them put a full sharpening choil in there, something like kind of like the Civivi button lock Elementum. That would be nice. Next thing that, that I think is a little bit negative is the inset clip. They could have inset the clip. They work a lot better when they're inset. You never have anything hitting the lining of your pants or the lining of your pocket, going in and out of the pocket. Now this one's not bad. It's just fine, but I still prefer it. I still prefer it to be inset. Now, other than that, that's really the only real issues that I have. This thing is absolutely amazing. They do lots of weight relief. It has a good weight to it. It's super snappy. I love using this thing because I can one hand use this and have this other hand working, doing things, and get it out of the way very quickly. You can easily spidey flick it. If you wanted to, you could add some quick studs to it. They would work just fine because I can thumb flick it without the quick studs. So I can imagine with some quick studs. I almost wish they would have put a hole or something in this, because the reverse flicking action is amazing, and it cuts so good, feels very good in the hand. That the blade rock issue does kind of bother me, so maybe an increased spring strength or something like that. But I guess we'll see, because I'm gonna take it apart and we're gonna stretch that spring out and see if we can't fix it a little bit. So after taking the knife apart, I took it all apart. You can see the insides. I got a little recording of the insides, and I basically took the spring out. And you don't even have to do much. You just have to take apart this side. If you take apart this side, your spring will be right there. I took the spring out and I stretched it. Not a lot, just a little bit. You don't want to stretch it out like this. You just want to give it a little, a little tug from each side and just kind of spread it out just a little tiny bit. Put it back, slapped it back together, and now my blade rock is absolutely gone. Not even a tiny bit of it. Detent is still perfect, feels the exact same. The detent didn't get really any stronger. No blade rock, no detent lash or anything like that. but it did take care of my blade rock. Is zero blade rock. It is locked up, very solid, no side to side or anything, but I never had that issue in the first place. It just had a little bit of up and down play that button locks seem to get, but you know, stretching out the spring just a tiny bit does seem to help. And I don't recommend anybody do some of the things I do in my video. This is just for your entertainment. But all in all, fantastic knife. I do like this knife quite a bit. You know, it's just such a good user, and it seems to hold up pretty good aside from the blade rock issue, which did come pretty quickly. It just looks like a knife. It does kind of look like a tactical knife. I do wish they would have done that, because I love the look of the Elementum button lock way better than this. I wish they would have just did that one with a flipper. That would be, man, right up my alley. But it is what it is, and they decided to do this knife, this blade shape, this design. But man, I think that they had so much more potential with the Elementum than with this one, so that is kind of a negative for me. You know, because it's not that one. Now, maybe in the future they'll decide to do that, but in this case they didn't, and I still like it a lot. I'm not trying to take anything away from this knife because it is an amazing knife. I just, you know, that deep hollow grind, spear point blade, whew, I love it. But there you guys go. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.